afternoon. You're listening to Cannabis Corner on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook and YouTube. Just go to your Facebook page and look us up and hit see first to see and hear all the great programs that we have here on WNHHLP. And just a reminder, Cannabis Corner is also streaming live on the Greenhaven Media Facebook page and ProCannabisMedia.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cannabis Corner. It is Monday, August the 10th, 2026. I'm your host, Joe the Weed Guy, Joe LaChance, and I am joined here, of course, by the one and only Uncle Lou, Farmer Lou. How are you today, my brother?
Well, it's going, sir. It's going, but it was a nice weekend, though. It's been beautiful out, brother. How are you?
I'm good. It was a little hot for me this weekend, but I had a good time this weekend. It was enjoyable. I did the Sunday service over at the Leaf Ministries. So that was nice. We talked about acceptance and letting go of things. So that was very cool. Had a nice meditation over there and hung out. I did that on Sunday. And then on Saturday at the local skate park by my house, I just happened to run into a little event they were having. And, I was driving from the grocery store and I heard live music. So I said, well, where's that coming from? So I found the little skate park and they had a whole event down there. Skating exhibition, live bands, all kinds of vendors and stuff, food trucks. They had a Puerto Rican food truck there.
Just at the park there by you, which was just a
Yeah.
community-based thing.
Yeah, it's a baseball field. It's called Washington Field. And then there's a skate park attached to it. So it's big enough to hold an event. And it was pretty cool. So there was skating there, live music. One of the bands that was there they had also played at one of our festivals. So I knew them.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's just out of the blue, I was just doing grocery shopping. So I don't, these little events, they pop up,
You got to kind of stop and take the time for it. It's like a energy telling you to do something. If you were a Jedi, it was the Force calling you.
I was determined to find it, and I was very pleased, because it's a local community event. You could tell these were local kids, pretty diverse age group, pretty diverse crowd. The vendors were very cool, like hippie-ish type stuff, and that punk skater stuff, with gaming, and they had cards. They had table people selling the cards. Yeah, it was very, very cool. Even at the last Burn and Learn event, there was a whole table of people selling just cards. Just saying. So,
Yep.
And I asked him how he did, and he said he did very well.
Yep. Very popular thing these days.
Yeah, so it's interesting the different kind of things you can go out there and sell and vend at these events. And then last Monday, as we talked about on the air, I did attend the Milford City Council meeting.
Yeah, how'd that go, brother?
Oh, boy. Well, first of all, I saw three candidates there. One was MJ, who is the state rep. We've had him on the show, MJ Shannon, Mike Shannon. He was there. Andrew Rice, who we had on the show, was there. And then the Republican who's running against Rosa DeLauro was there. And they all got up and spoke against lock cameras. And Andrew Rice his clip has been circulating on YouTube, gave the most passionate speech, I think, of the night. But the line to speak was out the door, Lou. Literally out the door. The place was packed, including the balcony part up top at the rafters. The crowd was rowdy. They were chanting, "Turn them off, turn them off," and people, these were not just act. You know what I liked about it, Lou? These were not just activists who were speaking. These were regular citizens that were speaking. People, plumbers. There was a guy there who owned a cybersecurity business. This was the best, one of the better speeches. And he said, I was voted number one cybersecurity business here in Milford. And he said it took me a total of 30 minutes to hack into 12 of your flock cameras. And I could see everything that they were doing.
Right.
So that's it. 30 minutes it took him. So how secure is your data? You know? And I also found out from people who were there more complaining about the tickets that they've been getting. Because you know the town of Milford brought in over $1 million in 1 month on
Yeah.
these traffic cameras, right? And that's part of the people wanted them going too. It was the good thing about it is that spurred the Milford people on,
Yep.
first of all, because they were getting these tickets and the money you have to pay online, right? You can't go to the police station and pay your ticket. A guy was telling me he tried to do that and they told him, no, you have to pay online. And the place you pay is in Philadelphia. It's not even going, so there's a third party involved collecting your data, making the decisions on whether to give you a ticket or not, or in the case of Flock, whether to flag you or not. So this is a lot more insidious and dangerous than people think. Your data is not secure. Your town, your state has basically sold out your information to a third party when they use these flock or the speed cameras. And that's dangerous for your freedom.
Yeah, you're privatizing things, masking it as public, kind of like they did in Puerto Rico.
Yes. Yeah, in a different way. That's a whole nother story, bro. I would love to get into that sometime about what the hell is going on down there and what they're doing to that island. And in the middle of a drought, no less.
Different conversation. Right now it's flock.
Yeah, it
Right now we're
is.
on flocks, not to be
So
personal.
I think Milford, being the size of a town that is, and the publicity that this whole thing got, because it did get spread around, the news was all there. All three news stations covered it. Um, After that, Ned Lamont didn't necessarily make an order and tell people to stop using them. But, and a matter of fact, he did not. That's not what he did. He asked for a moratorium on cities to set them up. In other words, he's asking any cities who don't have them not to get them. So that's kind of in a response to, there's a lot of outrage going on, bro. A lot of outrage.
It's only because it's an election year.
This is true, right? This is, hey, you just brought up a good point. It's only because it's an election year. Ah. But anyway, we're a cannabis show, and I think people need to understand how much this affects the cannabis community. And I'm having a little trouble with my mouse here, but I saw a post by Aaron Doolittle how Wyoming decided that they wanted to catch people buying legal weed. So they set up literally flock cameras, 20 of them, on the routes that it would take to get from Wyoming to, I forget which state it was because I'm having problems with my mouse right now and I can't really bring up the article. And we already gave examples of what happened, how Michigan is using it. I've already seen 3 examples of people going over to the border to buy legal weed, getting pulled over when they come back. Now this, I started with one, and then getting pulled over because the flock camera flagged them. Now the thing is, um, the police have to program that in. So in other words, they've programmed in if you only stay a short period of time going over the borders, flag the
Joe,
car. Yeah,
who's to say the information is not being shared within their systems that are in other states as well? If there's flock,
absolutely.
if and not just we're use once again we use the term flock camera as a generic term for
ALPRs, right.
right, which are run sometimes by other companies that aren't flock. But once
Yes,
again, we're using the generic term flock cameras.
right.
Um, they have them in all the states. So what's to say the AI program's just not giving that information to itself? You know what I mean?
Well,
So now,
obviously they're communicating because Michigan is telling Ohio, right? They're two different states, so there's flock cameras in Michigan.
but it's going to. That's where the AI is taking everything together. So what's it? It's two in two different states.
Yeah.
Now it's what the parameters it's looking for, and just to piggyback off of what you're saying, what if that parameter is already set in, where they say any license plate that flags leaving the state, then flags within X amount of feet of a dispensary, and then re enters the state in X amount of time. Literally, if you're able to create that prompt, and if this software is able to do that, you can do so. Like the AI would just literally grab every single person that happens to. We have
Dude,
to start trying to have to like outsmart the AI by going someplace, staying overnight, because that right there will give you a trafficking charge. Because
that's what they're getting them for because you're bringing it over state lines. Now, I can't bring up the article that Aaron posted, but they start I told you they put 20, the camera's right outside the dispensary, dude. The first camera is right outside the dispensary. So they're getting you when you come in and leave. And then they follow you the whole route. This is Wyoming and whatever state is
and it's
legal.
AI that does it. So
Yeah.
you have to think, this isn't something that needs somebody to catch all this stuff.
No.
They're just triggers. The way it works is, and that's where maybe we can have that explanation. The way these things work, just most people understand it's a trigger. So
Yeah.
something has to happen for the next thing to happen.
Right. You're
So
going over the speed limit. Right. You go in over an hour, different things.
so with something like this, what they're doing is recording every license plate that goes over the border. And
Yes.
then once your license, this is where the trigger would happen. You got ID going over the border. Now you've entered in another state where there's a flock camera that can give a approximation of distance to a dispensary. Like you said, there's one right outside the dispensary, so they'll know it's
You went to
50
the
feet.
dispensary.
Right. So now that's the second trigger. The third trigger, the third trigger is now you crossing back into the border.
Within
That
a
would
short period of time.
right. That would then generate a flag that would pop up on a police cruiser. And there's
Right.
probably in something like this, it's a setup operation.
Yeah,
There's
they
probably
already, yep.
15 police cruisers sitting there with one point person that's sitting there getting the information. And as that ticket pops up, they'll say, cool, car one, you're going after the red truck. Car two, you're going after the sedan. Car three, you're going after this. And they're set
Yeah.
up like that. It's not a
It's
happenstance.
yeah,
They're
it's
doing this
not
on
an
purpose.
accident. They're doing this on purpose. Now, what's to say they're not doing it in Maine, or Massachusetts, or New York, or Rhode Island? How? I mean, we're talking about right now examples in Michigan and Wyoming and shit. When does it hit our backyard? Do you know what I mean? In our community.
Florida. Just think about that. When's Florida and Alabama decide to start doing it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the red states have avoided it. I will say there are certain governors who are really against it, like you say, even though they're still in Florida. Because unfortunately, a lot of times they leave it up to the cities. That's why it's legal in Connecticut, but there's 50 cities, dude. in Connecticut that have flock cameras. 50. I don't know how many there are total in Connecticut. I don't know what percentage of our cities are that, but there's 50 cities or municipalities or towns, whatever you want to call them, using flock cameras right now, just in this state.
But that's, this is where we're noticing these new round of cameras, but they're stoplight cameras in many towns.
Yep.
They're just not enhanced with the AI.
Right. They're
But
not ALPRs.
right, there you go. The automated is the part that's the AI part.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, they've had, look, even when I lived in LA, they had the license plate cameras. But it just took a picture of your license plate. And it was only faced one way. And you knew when it went off because it gave a big flash. And they had a big sign right before it that warned you it was coming. And this was back in, I don't know, 2010, 2011. They started that out in California. So it's not a new thing, that's for sure. What's new, like you say, is this ALPRs and all the AI that's involved in it. They've taken it out of human hands, which is a scary thing. How
When the
long?
triggers are human, that's when we're okay with it.
Right, right. When a
You know,
cop sees you,
right. When the
it,
trigger is human, because there are the red light cameras and things like that. They're not automatic. They'll take the camera picture and then the cop has to, somebody runs a red
somebody
light.
human had to go through it. Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I remember getting pulled over years ago. Somebody ran a red light, hit me, and then they pulled the camera. They were like, oh, we got to pull the camera. It was New Haven. It took like 15 minutes. They had to call, speak to the people. They had to go through the camera and they got it. Oh, he ran the red light. He didn't have a license. And they arrested the guy.
Yeah, I mean, they've always had cameras all over. They're called traffic cameras. And
Right,
all they do is they're very high up and they don't give you much detail, but they record the traffic. You can get the feeds anywhere. You can see what's going on I-95. Is there an accident? Those have been around for a while. But again, there was no AI involved. You just would get the feed. It was just a feed of what was happening. So that way, when you get in an accident, they can pull that up.
right. And they were able to use this and that ideology to just backdoor the AI into it. And, oh, yeah, it's nothing. We're just adding a little AI.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very slippery slope for running in this country, in this world. I'm sure this is an issue in
All over
all
the
the
world.
modernized Western countries. That London, England has been under CCTV forever.
Right.
China has been under CCTV forever, with CCTV meaning closed caption TV, which I'm sure now all has the AI in it with facial recognition, et cetera, et cetera. So this technology is the double-edged sword. But our guest is here.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
wait. Oh, there she is. Okay. Our guest is here. I want to give her an intro because we got the primaries coming up tomorrow. And Ruth here is one of the candidates who will be running up against the incumbent and a couple of other people. The incumbent is John Larson. And then this is actually a 4-person primary, so I'm very interested. It's going to be a wild one. So right now we have Ruth. Ruth Fortune is a progressive Democrat from Hartford running to represent Connecticut's 1st congressional district. 26 years ago, she came to the United States from Haiti as an undocumented child. She is an estate planning attorney, a mom, a wife, and a member of the Hartford Board of Education. She made Connecticut history as the first congressional candidate to petition onto the Democratic primary ballot. Ruth believes the fight for a living wage, universal health care, affordable housing, upward mobility, and immigration reform requires leaders who have lived under these laws they seek to change. Okay, we don't have to say that. We'll say that on the air. All right, Ruth, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We are a show about cannabis, but we also know that who has ever in the in this seats We want them to be cannabis friendly, or we want them to be progressive. We know what we get from the old guard. And so that's why I wanted to have you on. You seem to have some new ideas. And the trend right now, and I could see it in politics all over the country, is out with the old, in with the new, right? We see a lot of incumbents not getting the nomination because even in your race, the Democratic Party actually endorsed Luke Bronin. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So even the Democratic Party here in Connecticut is ready for a change, I think. Correct? And you got on this ballot by petition. So there was no committee that voted, no caucus, none of that. You were so determined to get on this that you actually went out. How many signatures did you have to get?
We needed to get 3,734 signatures, and we got more than double that number, and then submitted, nearly 2,000 more, and then we hit that number. Yeah, we got more than the 3,734 we needed.
Right. Okay, so that's great. Now there already is an accomplishment, right? So it shows that that percentage of people want something new for Hartford. Now tell us a little bit about what made you decide to do this. You've been a member of the Board of Education, you're an attorney. So like when you and I want to also talk about, what it was like to come over here as a young person from Haiti. And like I said, when you read the bio, that line really struck me. You seem to have lived under a lot of these laws that you're seeking to change. So being somebody who came over here as an immigrant and being in the education, what the cuts, right? What all that does to the education system. And I'm sure that's probably one of your bigger platform ideas. But what made you decide finally, I'm going to get into politics? This is the only way to change this is to get in the game.
Yeah, I mean, the seed was planted a while ago when I was undocumented. In some ways, I lucked out. I got into a Baruch College in Manhattan where tuition was about $2,100 a semester, so less than $4,500 a year. And I got a waitressing job because it was Manhattan. I made decent tips. It was enough to pay my tuition and pay for my
Sure.
one bedroom that I subletted. And I was about to graduate college with this degree that I would just be hanging on the wall because I couldn't get a job through, proper company with benefits and so on. And this earthquake ravaged Haiti, where I was born. In response to that 2010 earthquake, the Obama administration gave Haitians who were here without any papers temporary protected status, that TPS, the same one that the Supreme Court just ended for Haitians. And it transformed my life. I realized that this weight that I had been carrying, this fear of deportation, this feeling of me not deserving the protection of the law, there's this bigger system at play. And all this time, there's no way I could have changed my circumstances. It took government action.
Right.
And that one policy change for me was the difference between opportunity and despair. And our policies and our laws, especially for the people who are most marginalized and most vulnerable, it can be the difference between life and death, right?
Right.
If you're a sick person, having access to health care, if you're homeless, being able to be housed. So that really planted the seed that at some point, if I am ever so fortunate, I too would like to be of service. But not the political field, there's really high barriers. I couldn't start running for office. Not that that was really my goal from the beginning either. I worked, tried to lift my family out of poverty, got married, had children, always had ways to help by helping people with immigration paperwork, serving on nonprofit boards, being involved in my community, ultimately being appointed to the Board of Education, and focused, frankly, on just being an immigrant, just wanting to achieve economic stability for me, for my children, and for my parents, whom I helped them retire 8 years ago because they'd never be able to do it on their own. And when Trump got reelected, I realized that this country is becoming the opposite of everything I ever wanted and the opposite of the country that gave me the opportunities that I had. And I saw that voices like mine were really underrepresented in Congress.
Yeah.
And the cruelty is coming out of Washington, D.C. So for me, the answer was, where can I make the biggest difference?
So you
And
chose
that,
federal, right, instead of
right.
local politics, right? I was going to get into that, but you answered the question.
Yeah, it was, where is my voice least welcome and least heard? And my view is, we're going to keep being on the menu until we're at the table. And we've had communities supporting Democrats, and I'm running as a Democrat, but Democrats sometimes they fail to deliver for some of their biggest supporters, right?
Yeah.
If you think of the communities of color and immigrant communities, we consistently, for the most part, vote Democratic, but we still keep getting left behind in so many of the growth and progress that we've seen in this country.
Well, and you made a good point there. The Democratic Party right now is going through a major shift because of that, over the last few years, they have not been keeping their promises.
Right.
It's been a lot of lip service. Do you know what I mean? And, in a lot of ways, they made a lot of mistakes when they did have power, things that did not really help. And they got distracted on all other kinds of things instead of the stuff that made that party what it was,
Right.
which was, the whole equality and and I see this, I don't want to call it a revolution within the party, but I do see people like you and other candidates that I've had on the show who have new ideas that could probably work and improve the state, the country, whatever side you're working on, improve it in ways that politics and red tape and, lobbying will never allow to happen.
Right.
So I think there's a bigger picture here besides getting candidates in who are at least going to bring up new ideas and try to get new bills through. We have to deal with also the amount of money and corruption that it is involved in politics at the top levels, because it's an entire system that almost has to be pulled apart piece by piece
Absolutely.
by piece.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even in the race that I'm in right now, both the incumbent and the other candidate who got the endorsement, they're both getting, I mean, there's millions, literally millions of PAC dollars being spent. And corporate PACs have gotten a bad reputation, as they should, but there's all these other special interest PACs that clearly have a purpose for existing. And a lot of them, their supporters, they don't have to disclose. If they're a super PAC, they don't have to disclose, just like any other dark super PAC. And they're spending millions on this race. And it's not on me, right? They're spending it on these two other establishment candidates. I mean, one of whom is probably even more, certainly more moderate than Larson has been in his career. But for Larson's part, despite his, sometimes fairly liberal views in some areas, he just hasn't been effective. He's been fighting for Social Security for 28 years and haven't delivered real change.
Right.
And Social Security is now in the, brink of bankruptcy potentially if we don't.
Trust me, I know. I collect it.
So do my parents, right? And it's very concerning. I appreciate everyone who wants to serve and their intention to help folks and to be of service. But when you're not delivering results, ultimately someone else needs to get a try at it and fight to make that change. And we need the voices of the people who live out those problems. Everyone in DC believe they know the solutions, right? Yet they're not getting anything done. When we have people who are in the thick of it, the hunger that we have for change, the mindset that we have when we approach the work, it's just different.
Right.
And that allows us to bring more people into the fold as well. People who felt like politics wasn't for them and they check out because no matter who's in office, their lives and their circumstances don't change. When they start seeing new types of leaders in office, people who've struggled like them, who've had to overcome like them, that sends a message that we can do this together. Join this fight and together we can make real change.
Right. And that's what it's all about. I think we have a lot of division in this country. And a lot of it is because certain people have been running this country for so
Right.
long. You know, look, it's gotten better than, let's say, when I was growing up. You can't imagine what it was like back then. You know, it was completely all that old guard, corporate. Um, and and it's just, I like what I'm seeing. Do you know what I mean? You're going to get a lot of opposition, but if any one of these candidates can get in one third of what you're proposing, right? Then you're doing good. If we can just get health care for all, right?
Right.
That would be great.
That'd be huge.
If we could get a fair immigration policy, do you know what I mean? Which doesn't allow criminals, but allows people like yourself who really want to make a new life to do it, and not make them jump through hoops and put them in camps so that
Mm,
you know what I mean. Look,
right.
we've had immigration for a long time. My great grandparents came over here after World War I. We've had many periods of immigration into this country, and we were always able to get people placed. Do you know what I mean? It actually enhanced this country.
Hmm. Hmm.
Somewhere along the line, we lost the ability, to do that in some way. And I think we got to get back to that, where we're more welcoming and helping to people. The fact that we allow people into the country and then just let them live homeless on the street, to me, that's a big deal. Everybody should have housing. There's plenty of land, there's plenty of empty buildings in this state or in this country, that if you put money in the right places, you can solve these problems. And I'm really glad that I'm seeing what I'm seeing in both parties. I think you're seeing, even in the Republican Party, you're seeing sort of a revolution there, which is good, which is good. So I wanted to go over some of your platform here, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is your top issue that you'd like to discuss? I obviously, being with the education, let's start with that. Connecticut education program. You are a member of the Board of Education in Hartford.
Hmm.
So I'm sure you know that, especially now with this administration, the Department of Education is in a state of flux, almost ready to be dissolved, and they've
Pretty much
cut.
barely a department anymore.
Yeah, and they've right, and they've cut a lot of funding. I'm always hearing stories now of teachers having to buy their own stuff. Schools not having enough money to do basic things like
Mm.
even maintenance. Um, and this is Hartford, so like you say, firsthand. What would you say would be a solution? What are you proposing to change? Here it is. You're going to fight for more federal. Here we go with my mouse. More federal funding to fund public schools.
Hmm.
Right, because we've been gutting that. And
Yeah.
I will say, the quality of education in public schools here, just not, we don't even have to go with the state, go with the country, is not at a high standard. I
Mm.
mean, the standards are lowered because there's no money to pay teachers. And tell us a little bit about what you think here. Now I got my mouse to work.
Yeah.
Right. The money's going to ICE. The money is not
Right.
going to the right
Going
place.
to the war in Iran, going to everything but our own people here in this country. Yeah,
Right.
there's a lot to do with education. I mean, at the very least, we need to put more federal dollars towards education. It's not a new problem that started under Trump. For decades now, we've been chronically underfunding public education.
On
And
both sides, right? Now I've talked to
yes,
Josh Elliott. The
exactly.
state is doing it too.
Exactly. And my view from the federal standpoint is none of our Congress members really have to deal with the public education system. Most of them themselves went to private schools. Their
Right.
children or grandchildren are going to private schools. So the idea of our public schools being underfunded, they hear about it, they read about it, they visit the schools, but it's not a real problem for their loved
They
ones
don't
because
care.
they have the money to opt out of it. And that's part of the issue. I want to see more federal dollars going into education so that we can pay teachers more. We should be recruiting the best and the brightest to teach our children and help form them and prepare them for whatever comes after, high school for them. And when I joined the Hartford Board of Education, we had a 13% vacancy. And it was really hard to retain some teachers because neighboring districts were paying a lot more and in some ways had a bit more resources than we had. We renegotiated the contract with teachers, gave them, over a 3-year period, a decent raise, still not getting them up to really what they deserve, but a raise that they've needed nonetheless. So we went from a 13% vacancy to like a 3% or so. And what it meant for some kids in the classroom, there was a mom who came and testified when I first joined the board who said her son, who was in middle school, didn't have a math teacher, a science teacher, a STEM teacher, and an English teacher for a sustained period of time. Right. And then when we did negotiate, we started paying teachers more. We filled that vacancy because now people wanted to come and work in Hartford again. We ended up with like a $50 million deficit this past academic year because it's a
Wow.
catch 22, right? You pay your people a living wage and what's somewhat reasonable so you can keep them, and you fill in vacancies so you have enough teachers to educate the kids, but then we don't have enough revenue to pay that and we have a deficit. And we've been very good as a board to advocate, and lots of other districts are facing their own challenges. So there was the overall cry from all of the towns and cities to the state level. So we have a short-term solution for that funding gap in Hartford, but we still ended up having to make some cuts for this coming year because of grants that expired. And we have the promise of funding to not make more cuts beyond just grants that expired and lower enrollment numbers, but it's still very difficult. We still don't have all of the resources that we deserve. Our high schools don't have librarians right now in Hartford, and we have schools that don't have music and arts and sports. It's just we know our kids are not getting everything they deserve.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I've seen it. And look, I'm not young. And I've seen how it has definitely not become a priority for the government over the years. Like
Right.
every year you're hearing, and this has been since the 80s, more
Mm-hmm.
cuts to education, more cuts to
Mm-hmm.
education. And now we see the results, right? We see the results in society itself. Well,
Yeah.
I can be real with you. Our people, the last couple generations have not been educated well through the public system. A lot of these, people are getting educated online, and what are they really learning, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it has shown up in society, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
It all
absolutely.
starts with education. You got a kid, you're starting them at what age do you start school? 6 years old, 5 years old? You
So,
got them.
so, so I have two kids in school currently.
Okay,
I
good. This
have,
is a good example,
yeah.
right?
So I have a freshman in high school, and I have a seventh grader, which is middle school in Hamden. And Hamden had their own round of cuts as well. You know what I mean? And for the answer, uh, preschool 3 years old, kindergarten 5 years old, 4 years
Mm-hmm.
old, depending when the birthday is. But what I'm hearing you say is you solve the problem on the educational side by doing the right thing, paying teachers a comparable wage, filling some of those seats, because I did, as a parent, going to some of these school board meetings, my children also had those prolonged substitutes. It
Mm-hmm.
comes from a different line item, I guess, or something, but you know, those numbers get passed down to the next year. Like you're saying, now you're facing more areas and a bigger deficit, and then how do you move into the next thing and the next thing? What are some of your thoughts if you were to be elected to help fix that?
So we need more money to come from the federal level. And then at the state level, particularly here in Connecticut, when we have each town has a different school district. And then if you take the greater Hartford area, we have multiple operators, right? I'm part of the Board of Ed for the Hartford Public School System, but we have operators who are competing with for the same kids. So doubling, sometimes tripling the overhead costs because different superintendents and different administrators, and then also a lot of money being spent on marketing to the kids so they can choose your district over the other district, and it's not actually increasing the quality of education. If we actually invested all of that in our public schools, it would make a difference. And there's been the realization that public schools need to be overhauled, but instead of investing in the schools, we keep coming up with all these other ways for people to opt out of public school. We have these tuition-free charter schools that take even more resources away from the public schools. Here in Hartford, I mean, even our own system, we have the magnet schools and the neighborhood schools. And with the magnet schools, we get kids from the greater Hartford area, but the school district doesn't have full control over which kids come because it's a lottery to meet certain quotas. And the whole thing, it's no parent wants to bus their kids somewhere or not go to their neighborhood school. They just want their quality schools, right? Quality. If the quality school is far away, then they're forced to send their kids far away. But
Right.
ideally, we would want our local schools, wherever we happen to live, to be fully funded and to have great education, great after school programs, great extracurricular activities for our kids. I have 3 kids in our Hartford public school system. They started at 3 in preschool. My oldest is entering 4th grade. And even with them, I already see sometimes like the extra support that they could benefit from that they can't get, or the extra things that they could do and operate at a higher level that sometimes you're not able to get because you have to meet every kid's needs and they don't have the latitude to cater to one child's specific needs.
And it's true. A lot of these cuts come, and I know now that schools are pretty much pared down to like the basics. So
Yes.
you're not getting music classes anymore. You're not getting art classes anymore. The physical education classes are a joke. All they care about are
So,
the team sports, right?
so I guess Joe, mind if I just kind of go with that?
Yeah.
With these cuts, I'm noticing my kids are coming home with a lot more fundraiser things. And so where 3 years ago, I might have been doing 5 fundraisers throughout the year. This coming year, we're already moving up now that the kids are in high school and such. So now it's a fundraiser a month, just about, And it's like
Mm.
they're asking the parents to generate, $200 to $400, kind of, as you start looking through this. Oh, we have one. It's $1 a day. Somebody in the family can sponsor $1 a day, or you know, and it adds up to $200 or $300, and then you start doing this every month. I'm Puerto Rican. My family immigrated over here. We didn't have very much. We're the first generation to start helping our parents out. My parents were 15 when they had me. Anytime I came home with anything about a fundraiser, it was no. That's not we fundraiser is not for right now. The schools should handle that. We have to worry about putting food on our table. Um, I just don't know how the parents who might be in that situation with the added cuts, like you said, money has to come federally. And I know that that's a big part, and I would support that 100%. But it just shows how much that has to come in. Your thoughts on that? You're educated, you're well versed, you understand the system, you're firsthand in it, you're experiencing it, like you said. You know, that's a huge difference because I made a comment earlier that it's election year, so people are showing up.
Yeah.
You're in the community. You're in the area that you're literally looking to work with. I live in Fairhaven or Bridgeport, or I only see candidates come to my area when it's time for a vote. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But you're there working every day. Yeah, I agree with you. You're right there in the thick of things. It's very admirable that you decided to take this on the federal level, really is. And I see why you would decide to do the Congress because I'm looking at the candidates. Like you say, Luke Bronin was the mayor, right? He was the mayor, and he's pretty much an establishment candidate, and you can tell because the Democrats endorsed him.
Right. He got the party insiders endorsement. Right. And yeah, I mean, for example, and I will say, I think he's a nice guy. I think Larson's a nice guy. But when he was mayor, his kids didn't go to our public schools, right?
Right,
As much as he was
right,
in the community, you're still opting out of a major public good of the very city that you're leading. Right. To
right.
me, that says something. Like I wouldn't want to eat from a chef who doesn't eat his own cooking, right? So
There you go, right.
you're leading in ways and you're opting out of those very public services that you're in charge of. And to me, that's a problem. And it's not just unique to Luke. It's a lot of politicians. That is how they operate. I do trust that the state and elder law and our federal Medicaid laws are so punitive towards working class and middle class seniors because to get
Mm,
long-term care, you have to be broke essentially. You can only have $1,600. So for a lot of my clients, that meant they had to sell their house, spend down that money, and be forced into a nursing home and have nothing left to their name. You don't have to make that choice ever if you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars or
I'm
tens of
glad
billions of dollars.
I'm glad you brought that up because I just had issues with keeping my Medicaid. Because you know why? I made $18 more.
Wow.
$18. But I did get it straightened out with them. They were going off of 1 month that was had 5 weeks in it. But anyway, I had to go through a lot with them just
Right.
recently, both in SNAP and my Medicaid, because I had to pick up my rent went up, gas prices went up. I picked up a
Mhm.
second job, make $400 extra a month. Just that almost put me over where they were going to cancel everything. And that would have thrown my Medicare into a tizzy. I would have had to pay the federal, because
Mhm.
Medicaid, when you have
Right.
Medicaid, they
Yeah.
cover.
Part B fee. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have had to pay that out of my pocket every month, and that would have cut my income way down. So I'm really glad I got that straightened out with them, but they gave me a hard time. They really, really did. So they're so strict on it. So let's move on to healthcare because I'm a big believer, just like you say, with education, that the federal government and the state government have a responsibility to its citizens that they are collecting taxes from
Mm.
to provide not only a good education for the children, but health care for the people. I
Yes.
think that's a basic need that could be covered. I'm not saying it could be like you say, Medicaid for all or Medicare for all, which, look, I'm on both. It's basic coverage. A lot of doctors I would like to see are not on there. You know what I mean? So there are limits to it, but at least it is basic coverage. So when you need a checkup, when you need urgent care, you don't have to worry about paying out of your pocket for it. And I
Mhm.
think every American deserves that as an option. There's
Oh,
going to be,
absolutely.
like you say, the rich people who have money who want to maybe get more coverage, and that would be available to buy. But I think as a baseline, everybody should have medical coverage. And they're, like you say, just whatever they give to the government employees, right, on the federal level. Something like that. They already have a system in place. That's for me an issue I would like to see solved. How would you propose to do that? Because I see you say universal health care for all. Would you propose like Medicare for all?
I would be in favor of Medicare for all. Insurance works well when you have a large group of people, put everyone on the same plan so that we pool the risk and give people access to preventative care. Depending on what studies and what proposals look at, it might not even cost us that much more to insure everyone. It's just that we'd be spending those dollars more efficiently. Instead of having to spend, say, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands for an emergency room visit, you get that person access to a primary care physician or an
Right.
APRN that they can see and prevent some of those emergencies. And not only do we reduce costs, people have better health outcomes, better qualities of life.
That's it. We have an unhealthy society. It obviously doesn't work. I mean,
We're
that's the
spending, yeah,
thing.
like 19% of our GDP or something like that on just healthcare. And we still are facing, only Western country, we have medical bankruptcy where, even my family, we're pretty solidly middle class. And, knock on wood, my husband and I, we've been healthy, our kids are healthy. But if both of us were to go through an extended period of time where we couldn't work and we're really sick, that can bankrupt our family. And we had to make the
Yeah.
financial decision. Do we want to pay the crazy premiums for long-term disability insurance, right? And we're both, he's a finance actuary. I was a financial advisor. I'm a trust. It's like we're both numbers and financial numbers people and very financially savvy. And we still have to make these decisions. And we understand the risk that we're taking, but also that premium is a huge expense. Do we really want to take on that extra cost? And for us, it's, at least for now, it's been optional. There are families that are making this decision with basic necessities, right? Do I buy a balanced groceries to feed the kids, or do I just buy the cheapest thing I can because I don't have the money to stretch it if I also want to pay for the utilities or also want to pay for the rent or also want to get clothes for first day of school for the kids? And it shouldn't be this hard. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. There is enough resources to make sure everyone has more than enough. And for me, if there's one thing I could do above anything else, it would be to make sure everyone who's working earns a living wage. The idea that we have folks who've worked more than full time, sometimes multiple jobs, earning subpar wages, it just carries on for the rest of their lives because then you get less social security benefits, right? And if we just pay people a living wage, $25 an hour, tie it to inflation, get people money in a dignified way. You work, you get enough to pay for the minimum cost of living.
Right.
That could solve so much of our issues.
Right. And I think you brought a big good point. And Harry in our chat also said a lot of it is the bureaucracy that sucks up all the money. Half of it never gets actually to the schools or the people who need it because there's such bureaucracy at the top. And like insurance has become such a racket that to try and change that system again, you're going up against these mega companies that have tons of lobbying dollars, and the people who are currently in power are very happy to take them.
Yeah, and they make you think if you revamp the entire system, somehow society will collapse. They make you think they're indispensable. You can't do without them. And it's simply not true. And we need, as much as I would love the opportunity to serve in Congress, I also approach this with, I will make the right decision, even if it means I lose my job, because there's going to be someone else ready to serve after me. And I think we need more people with that mindset. You go to do a job, not to serve special interests. Do the work, do it for a period of time, and move on. Exactly.
That's what we've lost. The people in power, and it's all levels of government, are no longer working for the people. They're working for whoever has the most money to pay them. The lobbyists, the corporation, whatever name you want to give it, the mafia, for all I know. And those people are supposed to be looking out for us. And they don't seem to be doing that anymore. And it's been a slow process. And over the years, they've just allowed this, changed laws to allow it to happen. And now it's at a point where the results are very, very obvious in society. We have, like we were talking, not as smart of a population anymore because the education system has faltered over the years. We have a very unhealthy population right now because the medical system has failed us over these last years. I'm old. This was not like this in the 70s. There was not that many unhealthy people or uneducated people or in the general society. So it's deteriorated over the years, and I think it's because they have allowed these corporations, these lobbyists, this money to get involved in politics and can control it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I saw someone mention that Medicare for all would not work. I mean, so the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, at one point, if you remember, it had a mandate. Everybody had to have insurance, right? Because the
Right.
whole idea is you need to buy into it when you're healthy. Because if you only get it when you're unhealthy, then it's always going to be filled with people who are taking out and not putting in. Once
Right.
we lost that mandate, it made it so that it becomes unsustainable, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you could just buy, home insurance whenever your house happens to break, burn down or get flooded, it would never be profitable for the insurance company or sustainable, even if you remove the profit, right? So the
Yeah.
idea of insurance is that you're supposed to be there your whole lifetime when you're sick, when you're healthy, and all of us in it together so that the people who need the care can get it whenever they need it. So that's
Right.
my view in terms of why we need to completely reform our healthcare system.
I agree with you on both counts. We've covered two big issues this show because we have to get off the air now. I'm getting the word. But and I really agree with you on both counts. These are basic things that the government should be providing, and they're not. They're just not doing it. So I'm with you on that. I would love to go over the rest of your platform, but give us your information. Tell us a little bit about tomorrow's primary. Get the vote out for you.
Yes, so tomorrow is election day. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'm Ruth Fortune. I am a Democrat running for Congress in the 1st District. You can check my website, ruthfortuneforcongress.com, to see all the information. The way we win is by having the Democrats show up and vote. The timeline to register to vote now has closed. So if you're not a registered Democrat by now, you no longer have the chance to do that. But if you are, you can go and vote. And turnout is very low in these primaries. It's the first time in 28 years that we're having a primary for this seat. Seize the opportunity. Go and vote. We're expecting somewhere between 25 to like 40% of people to vote. If we increase that turnout and those of us who just did not vote before or participate show up and vote for me, we can win this race. And that's the real way that change happens. I urge you to vote. Let your friends know. Let your neighbors know. Tell them to go vote. Every town has at least one location. Places like Hartford has multiple polling locations. You should have one within like a 5 to 10 minute drive from your house. If you need a ride, there's services that can offer that. Go out and vote and seize this opportunity. We rarely have primaries in Connecticut. So this is a chance
That's
to
true.
be strategic.
That's true. We've had Rosa and Larson in there for quite a while. It's time for a change. All right. I just got the word to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Ruth. Get out and vote for Ruth tomorrow. Also vote for Josh Elliott tomorrow. Ruth, Josh, both of them would help make a change for this state. Thank you so much, Ruth, for coming on. Like, share, subscribe at Joe the Weed Guy or at Greenhaven Media. Thank you for coming up, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Ruth. Get out and vote tomorrow.
Howdy, Joe, and you're listening to WMHHLP.